There's a constant traffic between the north and the south, and it's just a matter of time before the first case, will be showing up in whether it's First Nations, Inuit, or Métis communities.
Tonight, a dire warning from top doctors: don't let your guard down against the new wave of COVID-19 variants.
I certainly don't want to drink the water that's in our holding tank. I don't even give our dogs.
100,000 lakes in Manitoba and nary a drop of clean water to drink for some.
We've been left out of a lot of history, and a lot of the history is being written by non-Indigenous people. So I think visual artists are the ones that are writing the history for our people.
And decolonizing Canada, Aboriginal artists strive to take back control of our lives. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. An Indigenous fashion designer says her collection representing missing and murdered Indigenous women is meant to raise awareness about the issue, but some families say a dress that was showcased recently doesn't depict their loved ones, and they're calling the dress triggering. APTN's Tamara Pimentel has this story.
It's a collection meant to represent MMIW, the pattern Indigenous fashion designer Leslie Hampton used when designing these dresses are meant to symbolize each stolen sister and families affected.
We wanted each dot to, the vast majority of dots, to show the vast statistics of how many people how many Indigenous women we've lost.
She came up with the design 2 years ago, but this week, when this photo of Ashley Cullingbull wearing a dress from the collection was posted to social media, many complimented the dress, but some families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls thought it was in bad taste.
I've been traumatized, re-traumatized. It brings back all the memories.
MMIW advocate Deborah Green has a sister who was murdered in 1982 in Calgary. She calls the dress offensive, sexualized, and says the dots look similar to a blood splatter. A
lot of families that have reached out to me have been triggered, and some of their families passed by blunt force traumas and very violent deaths where it did symbolize blood for them, and they were traumatized by that image. The photos that were taken of Ashley are very provocative, I would say.
Another comment on the post read, "Keep wearing stuff like that, you'll go missing."
I think it sparks the conversation around victim blaming and how putting blame on the individual for maybe based on what they're wearing and what happened to them.
There's no way this photo that we've done was sexualized.
Cullingbull apologized on Facebook, but says she supports the designer and her campaign.
I have family members and friends that haven't come home. So to see a dress done in a way where it can be seen, in mainstream media, and it looks beautiful, but the truth behind it is that it's not. It's scary. The facts, the scary truth that we live in.
Hampton says she didn't grow up with her culture and uses her designs to reconnect with her community and to empower Indigenous people.
The Indigenous fashion community is really my way into learning about my indigeneity and learning about who I am as an individual. So I apologize so much if my work affected anybody in a negative way, and it's really just my exploration into myself and how I can continue to better work and better develop work in the future.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Calgary.
A new report by Indigenous Services Canada shows COVID-19 cases are going down in most First Nations communities and vaccination plans are on track, but new variants are still a major concern. Jamie Pashagumskum has the details.
The latest data from Indigenous Services shows vaccinations in the north and across the country are going well, especially in BC and Quebec. To date, 440 Indigenous communities have begun vaccinations, dishing out over 103,000 doses. But they stress Indigenous communities need to remain vigilant.
Right now, there's a spread of the variants of concern in different parts of Canada. And we want to actually make sure that there's no complacency, because there's a constant traffic between the north and the south, and it's just a matter of time before the first case, will be showing up in whether it's First Nations, Inuit, or Métis communities.
Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller says it won't surprise him if the variants are already in Indigenous communities.
Every COVID case is not the same. If it is in a northern and remote community that has a population per household that exceeds 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it's a tinderbox.
Miller says vaccinations are underway for urban Indigenous and announced all Indigenous adults will be vaccinated this spring. Christopher Munyas is the chief of Niskandiga First Nation in Ontario. The community declared a state of emergency in December due to bad water, and now another state of emergency due to off-reserve COVID cases. The remote northern community has less than 80 houses for its 479 members. Munyas says half the population lives off-reserve in Thunder Bay.
And amongst those people, there were some that contracted the COVID virus. We have 12 community members that caught COVID, and one is in intensive care. He's on a ventilator, and we have a couple more members that just went to hospital overnight.
Munyas is asking for help, but he doesn't have high hopes.
I think federal government should also step in, and we're always being subjected to a political volleyball. It's Ontario's jurisdiction or federal government's jurisdiction. We're just that. I don't know if we call it a volleyball or a ping pong. Nobody wants to address the issues.
Munyas has requested emergency housing so he can bring his community members home where they will be safe. Jamie Pashigamskam, APTN National News, Ottawa.
We need to take a break, but still ahead, more from the investigation that APTN is part of, clean water, broken promises, and why $1.6 billion hasn't fixed water problems on First Nations.
Do I want to do laundry or do I want to have a bath today? So it's like, you need to pick and choose here.
The federal government has spent close to $1.6 billion on drinking water on First Nations since 2015, but some say it's failed to address the needs of First Nations that rely on water delivery by trucks. A year-long investigation by 6 media outlets and 10 universities and colleges coordinated by the Institute for Investigative Journalism found that First Nations, where residents rely on large water tanks, can face health issues. And as Brittany Hobson explains, data shows a strong correlation between water tanks and COVID-19 outbreaks.
Whenever Lisa Raven makes a 3-hour drive from her home in Hollow Water First Nation to Winnipeg, she brings these water jugs to fill up. That's because her family is one of dozens in the Anishinaabe community who lack access to clean water despite extensive infrastructure upgrades from the federal government. Raven gets her water from a large tank or cistern that's connected to her home.
I mean, I certainly don't want to drink the water that's in our holding tank. And I don't even give, our dogs.
The federal government invested more than $9 million to upgrade the community's water treatment plant. Hollow Water was put on a boil water advisory in 2016 after dealing with ongoing breakdowns at the outdated plant. Indigenous Services Canada lifted the advisory 2 years later, calling the investments a success. But Chief Larry Barker is not satisfied with the solution. He says the federal government did not provide the funds to pipe water to every home.
The government is wrong when they fixed a boil water alert for Hollow Water. I hear it all over being presented by the feds, and I tell them no, because you did not complete the water line.
There are about 50 homes in the community who use water tanks. Leadership tells them to keep boiling their water. Thousands of people across Canada rely on cisterns for their water. APTN and its partners spoke with residents, leadership, and researchers who believe these systems have serious physical and mental health impacts on those forced to use them. Delivery trucks transport water from the treatment plant, where it is placed inside a large holding tank connected to a resident's home. This method poses major concerns around water quality.
You could have contamination with the hose at the treatment plant if it's not properly guarded and disinfected. You could have contamination because the truck is dirty.
And in extreme cases,
there's issues of some of our cisterns being cracked and infested with snakes and rodents.
Cisterns require regular cleaning, which can be costly and time-consuming. In Hollow Water, Raven says her tank hasn't been cleaned in nearly 8 years.
If you're putting that clean water into, a dirty tank, then it kind of defeats the purpose of that.
Barker says the funding is just not there to clean them regularly. The water coming out of Kathy Bjork's taps runs clear for the first time in decades, but she still won't drink it. A cistern was recently installed in her home in Hollow Water after years of using raw river water.
I mean, common sense would tell you, even if it is treated water, like say you leave a jug of water in a plastic jug for too long in the fridge, even that would get slimy. If you don't dump it, rinse it, or even clean the jug. Just common sense to me.
Tsuut'ina Nation in southern Alberta is facing a similar situation. The federal government invested $14.2 million into the design and construction of a new water treatment plant completed in 2019. However, 60% of the homes still do not have access to piped water. Leadership says the money was to address water concerns at the school, and there was not enough to pipe water to every home with a cistern. Kylie McGinnis lives in a home with 11 others. She says her cistern hasn't been cleaned in years.
The only time you see me drinking the water is when it's boiled, like when I have tea, or if it's from the fridge.
She says requests for her cistern to be cleaned and tested have gone unanswered by the nation. McGinnis's water was tested for bacteria as part of this series, and the results came back negative. This news provided some relief, but she says it doesn't change things. It's not just what's in her water that concerns McGinnis, it's also how much is coming out of the taps. Residents say they often have to ration water out of fear of running out. In some communities, water delivery may only come once a week, meaning families have to make sacrifices.
Do I want to do laundry or do I want to have a bath today? So it's like, you need to pick and choose here.
The COVID-19 pandemic has heightened these concerns, according to researchers.
Under COVID, we're saying, wash your hands frequently, right? But if you turn on the tap and there's nothing there because the cistern hasn't been filled, which is a frequent occurrence, then you can't do that.
Data gathered during the consortium's investigation has found that Indigenous communities, where some residents rely on cisterns, have experienced twice the risk of an outbreak of COVID-19. While no research has been done to determine what might be causing this, Shirley Thompson, an associate professor at the University of Manitoba, is not surprised.
Cisterns are a leading source of contamination in First Nations. That stresses the body in all sorts of ways. And we know that people who have higher risk for infections, that have weakened immune systems, are more prone to COVID.
We do keep track of.
When presented with these results in an interview last month, Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller said he would have to look at other factors, but noted.
We know the spectrum of vulnerabilities that exist in Indigenous communities. It perhaps contributes to the general wellness index.
When it comes to cisterns, cost is key. While this option is the most affordable, experts say in the end, the long-term costs are more detrimental.
It's much more expensive because the health impacts around stomach cancers, around liver disease, around bacterial infections, the deaths caused to this, and early, a life loss is immense.
The government disagrees that piping water to homes is the best way forward in all cases.
We know piped water, depending on how far you need to pipe it, and given often distances between residences, is not the optimal solution.
However, this doesn't sit well with some residents in places like Sutina, who are adjacent to urban communities.
There's the city of Calgary, there's Bragg Creek, there's Cochrane, there's everybody that has running water, freely running water. Then there's us living on cisterns.
In the case of Hollow Water, the community continues to grow, but new homes built will have to rely on cisterns because they are too far from the water line. That hasn't stopped Barker from advocating for his people, but without any new funding, residents like York are left wondering.
So when we'll ever be on a community line is beyond me, maybe not even in my lifetime. Who knows, right?
Brittany Hobson, APTN National News.
For more stories on the water investigation that APTN is part of through the Institute for Investigative Journalism, visit aptnnews.ca/clean water broken promises. We need to take another break, but when we come back, Indigenous artists clean up at the Governor General's Arts Awards. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Carmen Carter sent us this shot. It was taken just outside Aquaskeet Healing Lodge, located at Onion Lake, Saskatchewan. Nice, beautiful, bright, sunny day, a big blue sky. Keep your photos coming. You can send them to us at share@aptn.ca. Your photo could be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, we've got 2 and snow for St. John's, 5 and some cloud for Halifax. -4 and snow for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, and Ukshwak -25 and sunshine. Chibougamau -15 and sunny. Montreal snow -4. North Bay sunshine and -8 snow and -3 for Sault Ste. Marie. Kapuas, Casing, and Timmins both -8, mostly sunny. Same with Big Trout Lake. Thompson and Puckatawagan snow and -6, -18 and snow for Churchill. 1 in cloud for Winnipeg, 1 in sunshine for Brandon, Gimli, and Dauphin. 3 and some cloud for Swift Current, mix of sun and cloud, and 2 for Saskatoon. -2 and snow for Buffalo Narrows, -18 and snow for Uranium City. -13 and snow for Fort Chip, -5 and snow for Fort McMurray. Mix of sun and cloud, and 5 degrees for Edmonton, mix of sun and cloud, and 4 for Lethbridge. Sunshine and 8 for Kamloops, snow for Quesnel, and 4 degrees. Dace Lake, -2 and snow. Prince George, 2 and a mix of sun and cloud. Mayo, -12 and snow. Rock River, mix of sun and cloud, -23. Cloudy skies for Norman Wells, -27. Wati, sunshine, -32. -32 for Inuvik, clear skies there. -36 and clear for Polytech. Snow and -34 for Cambridge Bay, -37 and snow in Baker Lake. Tallyoak, -42, clear skies, -45 in Joe Haven, clear there as well. And Kenite, -28 and some sunshine. The winners of Governor General's Awards in Visual and Media Arts were announced yesterday, and this year most of the recipients were Indigenous artists. Daryl Stranger has more.
Established in 1999, the Governor General's Awards recognizes those in visual and media arts. There are 8 awards representing excellence in various art forms throughout Canada. 5 Indigenous artists won this year. They are Dempsey Bob, Nunavummiant Jermaine Arnuktiok, Bonnie Devine, Cheryl LaRondelle, and Lori Blondeau.
They phoned me one day and said I got it, and that morning I was working in my studio, and I told them, I said, it only took me 50 years, I told her.
Bob is a tall, tan Tlingit artist in BC and has been carving and sculpting for over 50 years. He says his art honors the history of his ancestors.
I realized that our people did some of the greatest sculpture ever done by anyone. And I wanted to honor them and get the recognition for them. Because, you know, if you understand art, our ancestors were great sculptors, great artists.
Each of the 8 award winners received $25,000 and a special medallion made by the Royal Canadian Mint. The National Gallery of Canada also showcases the winners' work. Laurie Blondeau is a visual artist who works in performance and photography and says the emergence of Indigenous artists into the mainstream is long overdue.
We've been left out of a lot of history, and a lot of the history is being written by non-Indigenous people. So I think visual artists are the ones that are writing the history for our people. And I think it's very, very important because then, you know, we have so many young, talented Indigenous artists that need to see these examples.
Bob says art and culture go hand in hand.
Culture is what makes us human. It makes us Tlingit. It makes us Taldan. It makes us Nishka. Makes us Cree. That's who we are. And that's what I believe, and that's what I know through the art how important it is, because art is what shows what the culture values, the standards, the direction of a culture is.
Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
As mentioned earlier, APTN is part of a consortium of media and academics who've done a deep dive into water issues on First Nations. On In Focus today, we dug more into the why and the how that the federal government has failed to ensure safe drinking water on First Nations. Despite spending $1.6 billion in the past 5 years, Annie Burns-Piper managed this huge consortium. She shared what she found most surprising in the 2-year investigation. In the midst of all of it, there's so much effort and energy and hard work that went into it. But is there something that was most surprising or intriguing to you, like a kind of an aha moment or a holy crap moment in all of this?
Well, I think in working with Brittany on the story that you just shared, I was really interested to see that even though the federal government is pouring billions of dollars into new water treatment plants, there seems to be no oversight of how these projects are working out and how the firms that are hired are actually doing in terms of how they're treating communities, how good their work is. And to me, that was quite shocking. It seems like basic common sense. You know, if you hire someone for a job at your home, if they don't do a good job and they don't treat you well, you don't invite them back.
Right.
But it seemed, that on these multi-million-dollar projects across the country, there was no one sort of tracking the performance of these firms, and that I found was quite surprising.
You folks at the Institute for Investigative Journalism have a tip line. Tell us about that. How does that work? How can people get a hold of you?
Yes. So we have an email that we can share with you. It's tips.iij@protonmail.com. And we would love if people have any more information on engineering or contracting firms doing any type of infrastructure project on a First Nation. If they have information about how those projects are going and want to share it with us, they can write us at that email, and I'm the one checking it. So I will be reading anything you send.
And one neat package on our website, aptnnews.ca/cleanwater broken promises. We're out of time. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.